Vanessa kissed me on the cheek, gym bag slung casually over her shoulder. Spin class. Don't wait up. I smiled, easy and unconcerned, just as she expected. Of course. Have fun. She hesitated, just for a second, her eyes searching mine, gauging my reaction. I gave her none. She exhaled, then turned on her heel, her ponytail swinging as she walked out the door. The moment the lock clicked behind her, I reached for my phone. A few swipes and there it was. Her location, a glowing dot moving across town, but not toward the gym. I knew where she was going before she even got there. For months I had let the small things slide. The way she came home with her hair damp but not from sweat. The sudden interest in fitness when she'd never cared before. The way she tossed her phone screen down on the counter the moment she walked through the door. I gave her space. I watched. I waited. Tonight, I had everything I needed. I grabbed my own bag, far lighter than hers, and slid into my car. The drive across town was short, but my mind stretched through years of our life together. The quiet Sundays, the vacations, the whispered promises of forever. And now this. The cheap motel loomed ahead, a neon vacancy sign flickering like a dying heartbeat. I pulled into the lot, rolling past her car. Parked at the far end, half hidden by shadows, subtle, but not subtle enough. I stepped into the front office, the smell of stale coffee and disinfectant thick in the air. The clerk barely glanced up. I slid my ID across the counter, voice steady. Room next to 214, please. His fingers clacked over the keyboard, eyes skimming the screen. One night stay? Just a few hours? Keycard in hand, I made my way down the dimly lit hall, my pulse steady, my mind clear. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to end one. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, pressing my back against the wall. Through the thin motel walls, I could hear everything. Laughter, a low murmur, a pause, then the creak of a bed. I took out my phone, pressed record, and waited. I sat in the dark, my back pressed against the cold motel wall. The thin plaster might as well have been paper. Every sound from the next room reached me with perfect clarity. A hushed giggle, the unmistakable clink of a belt buckle, a muffled murmur, deep and slow. His voice. Mira, the man my wife was willing to risk everything for. I tightened my grip on my phone, the screen dimly illuminating my fingers. The recording app ran in the background, collecting every breath, every moan, every whispered deception. They thought they were alone. They thought they were untouchable. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I had always prided myself on my patience. In business, in life. I played the long game. I read between the lines, waited for people to reveal their true nature. And Vanessa had. She just never realized I was watching. Through the paper-thin walls, the bed creaked again. A soft gasp, a teasing laugh. Then Ryan's voice, arrogant and smug. Your husband's still buying this gym excuse? Vanessa let out a breathy chuckle. He doesn't ask questions. He's predictable. Predictable. I smirked in the dark, my heartbeat steady. Let her think that. The irony was almost poetic. She had no idea that her predictable husband was sitting just feet away, orchestrating her downfall. I stood and moved toward the adjoining wall, pressing my hand against it. I could almost feel their warmth through the plaster. A hollow space separated us, yet the divide between us had started long before tonight. Maybe it began when she started turning away from me in bed, claiming exhaustion, or when she suddenly started locking her phone, smiling at the screen when she thought I wasn't looking. Or maybe it started when she stopped saying I love you first. No matter. This was where it would end. I checked the recording, 16 minutes in. Enough. I switched off my phone and inhaled deeply. My pulse didn't spike, my hands were steady. Time to act. I grabbed Vanessa's gym bag, the same one she carried out of the house 3 times a week, filled with nothing but deception, and stepped out into the hallway. The dim, flickering light cast long shadows as I approached room 224. Inside movement. Low whispers, the sound of a zipper. Perfect timing. I knocked once. Firm, deliberate. Silence. Then, a shuffling sound, a moment of hesitation. Ryan's voice came first, cautious. Who is it? I said nothing. The lock turned. The door creaked open just a sliver, revealing Ryan's confused, slightly annoyed expression. Then his eyes locked onto me, and widened. Before he could react, I stepped forward, forcing the door open. Vanessa, still sitting on the edge of the bed in nothing but tangled sheets, gasped. I held up the gym bag, my expression unreadable. You forgot your water bottle. A sharp silence filled the motel room, thick and suffocating. Ryan stood frozen in the doorway, his bare chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. He was still processing the reality of my presence. Vanessa, tangled in the sheets, clutched them to her chest as if they could shield her from the inevitable. "Jay," she stammered, her voice cracking. What are you doing here?" I stepped inside as if I belonged, slow and deliberate. The gym bag dangled from my fingers, swinging slightly. I placed it carefully on the chair near the bed, its presence an unspoken accusation. "You forgot your water bottle," I repeated, voice calm. "Thought you might need it after such an intense workout." Vanessa paled, her lips parting as if to explain, to lie, to spin some last-ditch story. But I wasn't here for her excuses. I turned my attention to Ryan. He had already taken a half-step backward, his survival instincts kicking in. His fingers twitched at his sides, as if debating whether to grab his pants or make a run for it. "Please," I said, raising a hand to stop him. "Don't let me interrupt. You had such a good rhythm going." Ryan swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Look, man, shut up." My voice cut through the air, sharp and final. He shut up. Vanessa scrambled off the bed, yanking the sheet around her body. "Jake, please, You what?" I interrupted, my eyes locking onto hers. "You thought I'd never find out? That I was too stupid? Too predictable?" Her mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. A few taps and the recording started playing. Ryan's voice clear as day. "Your husband's still buying this gym excuse?" Vanessa's laughter followed, light and careless. "He doesn't ask questions, he's predictable." The sound of Ryan chuckling. The creak of the bed. Vanessa's hands shot up as if she could physically push the words back into my phone. "Jake, turn that off. This isn't what?" I asked, stepping closer. "Not what it sounds like?" She flinched. We both knew there was no talking her way out of this. Ryan took another step backward. I smiled. "Thinking about running?" He stiffened, his jaw clenched. "This isn't my fault." I raised an eyebrow. "No? Just an innocent guy caught with his pants off?" He glared but said nothing. "Smart." I turned to Vanessa. "You know," I mused, "I had a feeling something was off. The late nights, the lies, the sudden enthusiasm for fitness." I gestured toward the sheets. "But this is impressive. Real dedication to your craft." Her eyes welled up, but I wasn't interested in her tears. I pulled out one final surprise, a crisp manila envelope. I tossed it onto the bed between them. Vanessa's eyes darted to it, then back to me. What is this?" I smiled. "Your exit plan." Ryan, still half-dressed, frowned. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means," I said, straightening, "that your little affair just got a lot more expensive." Vanessa hesitated before reaching for the envelope. She pulled out the papers, scanning the bold words at the top. "Divorce petition." Her breath hitched. "Jake, spin class is over," I said simply, and then, without another word, I turned and walked out the door. I didn't look back as I walked out of the motel room. I didn't need to. I could already hear the chaos unraveling behind me. Vanessa's panicked whispers, the rustling of sheets as she scrambled after me, the sharp scrape of Ryan snatching up his clothes, probably realizing he had no plan for what came next. I made it halfway down the dim hallway before Vanessa's bare feet slapped against the linoleum. "Jake," she gasped, breathless, still clutching the sheet around her. "Jake, wait." I didn't stop. Not when she reached for my arm, not when her fingers curled around my wrist, desperation leaking into her touch. I turned only when I reached the exit, meeting her wild, pleading eyes with nothing but calm. "What could you possibly have to say, Vanessa?" She swallowed hard. This isn't what you think. I didn't mean for it to..." I let out a sharp laugh. "You didn't mean for what, to get caught?" She flinched. Guilt flickered across her face, but I saw something else too. Fear. Not fear of losing me, fear of losing control. I took a step forward, watching as she instinctively stepped back. "You were so confident, Vanessa. So sure I'd never question you, never see through the lies." I shook my head. "Tell me, what exactly was the endgame here? Were you ever going to leave me? Or was I just a safety net while you played house with your little side project?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I love you, Jake." "Stop," I said, voice cutting through her excuses like a blade. "Don't say that, not when we both know you stopped loving me the second you started sneaking around with him." Behind her, Ryan finally stumbled into the hallway, hastily buttoning his shirt. His hair was disheveled, his face still flushed from the embarrassment of being caught. He hesitated, probably debating whether he should step in. Bad idea. You, I said, leveling my gaze on him. You've been awfully quiet. Ryan lifted his hands, feigning innocence. Look, man, I didn't know she was still... Still what? I cut in. Still married? That's interesting, because just minutes ago you were laughing about how predictable I am. His mouth snapped shut. I smirked. That's what I thought. Vanessa turned back to me, tears now streaking her face. Jake, please. You want to beg? I asked, tilting my head. Save it. Not for me. For your lawyer. I turned, pushed the door open, and stepped into the cool night air. The motel's neon sign buzzed faintly above me, its flickering light illuminating the parking lot. Behind me, Vanessa's sobs turned into broken, hiccuping gasps. I could hear Ryan muttering something to her, maybe an excuse, maybe an escape plan, but I didn't care anymore. I was done. I walked to my car, the divorce papers signed and sealed, my revenge complete. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The motel's neon glow faded in my rearview mirror as I pulled onto the highway. I rolled the window down, letting the crisp night air cut through the lingering weight of the past hour. For months I had felt something rotting beneath the surface of my marriage, like a house with termites burrowing deep into its foundation. I had waited, collected evidence, watched it all play out in silence, and now it was over. I should have felt angry, maybe broken, maybe lost. Instead, I felt light. My hands gripped the steering wheel steady as I replayed Vanessa's face in my mind, the sheer panic when she saw me standing there, the dawning horror when she realized just how deep my knowledge went. She thought she had me figured out. Thought she could lie, cheat, and manipulate without consequence. She was wrong. The phone on my passenger seat buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Vanessa. I let it ring. Then came the text messages one after another lighting up my screen. Jake, please, let's talk. I made a mistake. I love you. I swear it didn't mean anything. Please answer me. I smirked and deleted them all without reading the rest. Somewhere in that motel room, Vanessa was probably still standing there with her phone in hand, shaking, hoping for a different ending. Maybe she thought if she cried enough, begged enough, she could fix what she had shattered. But I wasn't interested in fixing anything. I had given her everything. My trust, my loyalty, my time. She had taken it all for granted, convinced that I would never be the man to fight back. That I would be too soft, too forgiving, too predictable. She'd miscalculated. I pulled into the driveway of our house. No, my house now. The place that used to feel like a home, now just a shell of broken memories. The porch light was still on, casting a dim glow against the front steps. I stepped inside. The air was still, thick with the presence of someone who wasn't coming back. The framed wedding photos on the hallway wall stared back at me, mocking reminders of vows that had meant nothing to her. One by one, I took them down. I didn't throw them, didn't break them. That would have meant I still cared. Instead, I placed them in a box, sealing them away like a relic of another life. By the time I reached the bedroom, the weight on my chest had lifted. I stripped the bed of its sheets, the same ones Vanessa had probably slept in after coming home from her gym sessions, and tossed them into a trash bag. Fresh start. The phone buzzed again. A new text. Ryan has blocked this number. I let out a low chuckle. Of course he had. For all his arrogance, all his bravado, the moment things got messy, he ran. I wondered how long it would take before he ghosted Vanessa completely, leaving her alone in the wreckage she created. Not my problem. I headed to the closet, reaching for the suitcase Vanessa had always used for her so-called work retreats. I threw in a few of her clothes, nothing valuable, just enough for her to get by. Then I dragged it to the front porch and set it down next to the door. She'd be back, eventually, maybe tomorrow, maybe in a few days. She'd cry, plead, try to manipulate me into taking her back, but when she arrived, she wouldn't find a husband waiting with open arms. She'd find a locked door and her things waiting for her on the porch. A final text popped up. Jake, please don't do this. Let's fix it. I love you. I didn't bother replying, I just blocked her number. Then, for the first time in years, I stepped outside, breathed in the cold night air, and smiled. Vanessa had spent months lying to me, playing her game, but I had just played my final move, and I won.